Call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. Need a motion for adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on November 12th, 2019 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have a number of hearings tonight, but before we do that, I'd just like to ask Councillor Wall and Fire Chief Carpenter to join me at the front, please.
That's where we do our polka.
Yes. Try to use the microphone. Okay. I guess here so we can use the mic. This evening, it's my pleasure to present two long-term service award pins. First of all, for 5 years of service in his capacity as councillor, I want to present Councillor Wall with his 5-year pin. Congratulations. And way beyond the 5-year mark, I want to present Chief Carpenter with his 40, get this right for the press, 40-year pin and certificate. And Phil, thank you for all your service to the city of Portage. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing for first reading of PC 81-19. This is rezoning bylaw 19-8702, Amendment 122. This is for 122 4th Street Northeast, and this is for Adrienne Hoffer. Is there anyone here to speak to, for, or against the hearing?
I am here. I'm Adrienne. I'm here to answer any questions the council will have.
Okay, thank you. Did council have any questions for the proponent?
Excuse
Mr.
me, Your
Brooks?
Honor, but this is not a hearing for it. This is just for the first reading to get it all going.
Okay, thank you. Oh. Okay, just first reading. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and Councillor Meyer?
Yes, be it resolved that the public hearing for PC 81-19, rezoning bylaw 19-8702, now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor? Question?
So just for, is this a public hearing or is this not a public hearing?
This is not a public
Okay,
hearing.
so
There
then
should be no closing of it because this is just a reading, first reading to get the bylaw
Perfect.
started.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, then, Your Worship, then I'll bring, on behalf of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, the issue, of course, tonight is to commence the zoning amendment process for rezoning the above-listed property, which is 122 4th Street Northeast, from R1 Residential Single Family to C2 Central Commercial, to the City of Portage la Prairie zoning bylaw number 10-8492, and by giving bylaw number 19-8702 the first reading. So the alternatives to give that bylaw 19-8702 first reading and to advertise, or of course to not give bylaw number 19-8702 the first reading. So the background briefly is the background in question is Lot 9, Block 27, Plan 30 of the Parish of Portage la Prairie. It is presently zoned R1 as residential single family. The applicant, Adrienne Hofer, wishes to rezone the property to C2, or as we know it, central commercial. If this property is rezoned, either 2 parking stalls are required, complete with year-round access, or owner will need to apply for a variance to reduce the parking stalls which will require council's consideration at that time. So the Portage la Prairie Development Plan states, and there's 4 areas of the planning development that is there. Does council wish me to read them? With that said, I know we've been through them, and of course I'll just highlight the areas. So one is, first of all, the home-based business that would apply to this, the downtown corridor uses, the neighborhood area interface, and of course the urban design standards. So the application will be circulated to the province for review and then comment after the first reading if that takes place. As per section 74(1) of the Planning Act, council shall indicate its intention to enact a zoning bylaw amendment by giving first reading and then proceed with the public notices set out in section 168. The first reading of bylaw number 198702 will commence the process as defined in the Planning Act in considering this application. So with that said, and it's the recommendation of this committee that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie give bylaw number 198702 first reading and provide public notices as defined in section 168 of the Planning Act. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? Mr. Brooks, just for clarification for, I guess for the proponent, can you just kind of outline the next steps that will happen and maybe rough timeframes?
This is for first reading, so we will have to advertise to everybody within 100 meters of property. We will have to advertise in the paper 2 times. And we'll come back to council on February 24th for the hearing, and if council so wishes, second and third reading at that time.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for PC use PC 8419, and this is for 1400 Saskatchewan Avenue West. And this is for Nicholas Vasclarius, and he said he'd help me with the name if I needed it. Would you like to speak to the hearing or just answer questions?
I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Council have any questions? No, none? Okay, that was easy. Thank you. Need a motion to close the hearing?
Be it resolved that the public hearing for conditional use PC 84-19 for 1400 Saskatchewan Avenue West, Nicholas Vasclarius, now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, council, again from the Planning and Economic Development Committee before you. Here we're on the conditional use. My forgiveness while it's loading. Once again from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, file number PC 84-19 for Nicholas Vasclarius and Over the Coals Restaurant, Inc. Keeping in mind this is at 1400 Saskatchewan Avenue West. The issue is to allow a dwelling suite above the first floor with a minimum floor area of 37.2 square meters. Our alternatives is to approve the conditional use application as presented, to approve the conditional use application with conditions, or to deny the conditional use application. Part of the background, Over the Coals Restaurant, Inc. and Nicholas Vasclarius have applied for a conditional use to allow a dwelling suite above the first floor with a minimum floor area of 37.2 square meters. The applicant would like to construct a second floor suite over the existing commercial building. The property now is located as a C3 Avenue Commercial. The application was circulated to various city departments, no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners with 100 meters radius, and there have been no objections. So that note is the recommendation of this committee, and I so move that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the conditional use application of Over the Coals Restaurant, Inc., Nicholas Vasclarius, to allow a dwelling suite above the first floor with a minimum floor area of 37.2 square meters in a C3 Avenue Commercial at the property 1400 Saskatchewan Avenue West, which is legally described as Lot 1, Plan 14 in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. That concludes our hearings for this evening, so we'll move right into committees.
Your worship, I think we have one more public hearing.
We just have some computer difficulty. We'll be okay. We'll open the public hearing for variation order PC 8519. This is 1400 Saskatchewan Avenue West, and this is for Nicholas Valerius. Kids, is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Did council have any questions for Nick? Councillor Draycott?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, it does look like there's 4 parking stalls currently outside the building, but 2 of the parking stalls are within the title of the building. So there will still be 4 parking stalls.
Be 5 actually, because the shed is gonna be added there, so there'll be more than what it is now. So there'll be an extra parking there.
Just not all of them belong to the title of the building.
No.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Any further questions from council? Okay, thank you, sir. Need a motion to close the hearing, please?
Be it resolved that the public hearing for variation order PC 85-19 for 1400 Saskatchewan Avenue West, Nicholas Vasilarakis, now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, once again, council from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, file number PC 85-19 for 1400 Saskatchewan Avenue West, Lot 1, Plan 14 in the parish of Portage la Prairie. The issue, the applicant is looking to vary the following: the front yard requirement of 6 meters to be reduced to 2.43 meters, the rear yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 0 meters, the east side requirement of 3 meters to be reduced to 0.870 meters, the west side yard requirement of 3 meters to be reduced to 0.15 meters, and the number of parking stalls reduced from 3 to 2. As usual, we have the alternatives to approve the variation, or of course to deny the variation. Some of the background: Nicholas Vasilarakis and Over the Coals Restaurant, Inc. are applying for a variation order to allow the following. I read those previously. The applicant would like to construct a second-floor suite over the existing commercial building. There is room for only 2 on-site parking stalls. The building is in a C3 Avenue commercial. The application has been circulated to the various city departments with no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners with a 100-meter radius, and there's been no objection. So it's the recommendation of this committee, and I so move that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Nicholas Vasilarakis to vary the following: the front yard requirement of 6 meters to be reduced to 2.43 meters, the rear yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 0 meters, East side requirement of 3 meters to be reduced to 0.870 meters. The west side yard requirement of 3 meters reduced to 0.15 meters, and the number of parking stalls reduced from 3 to 2. At the property known as 1400 Saskatchewan Avenue West, which is legally described as Lot 1, Plan 14, in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Draycott?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not very often do we see such constraints on a lot. Mr. Brooks, is there any issue with surrounding properties if we are going down to 0 meters and 0.15 meters on this particular building? Is there any changes to the structure?
There is a couple of requirements that he will need to comply with as per the building code. If you look on the site plan, or on the map, and I apologize, we should have sent the drawing that showed the 2 parking stalls, because he does have room for the 2 parking stalls on there. But on the west side and east side and the south side all face streets. So under the building code, we look at spatial separations, and spatial separations, you can go to the middle of the street for that. So there won't be any issues with any of that. The rear one will be an issue, but he's aware that he has to build it as a firewall on that wall. The second floor suite will have to be built as a firewall. And there is some other requirements between the business below and the business above for sound and fire rating that he is aware of as well, that will be reflected when he comes in for the permit. They should be on his plans.
Any further questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Going to move right into committee. First up is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. Tonight we have the 2020 fees and charges summary, and just as a reminder, this is something that administration does annually to take a look at our fees and charges and really look at it from a break-even standpoint and a competitive analysis and reviewing similar services. The schedule is attached, so I'm not going through every one of those items, but there is a few that are just highlighted here. That's the solid waste and recycling fees. The city has renewed its solid waste contract at 12% over the prior year's cost or prior contract cost, and as a result, we will see bills increase to utility accounts of $2.50. So not as significant, but it is passing along the increases that we're seeing on that contract. Local vehicle for hire, that has been quite a process for our administrative team here, and it again is seeing a little bit of a tick up in costing because of the amount of time and effort it is taking administration to deal with that. And our firefighting services, the changes are reflective of the costs associated with firefighting and some negotiations there. So there was a minor change to cemetery fees because when this went to committee, there was a duplication of that fee. With that being said, it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the 2020 fees and charges outlined.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that does conclude my council report.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. Councillor Meyer, City Planning and Economic Development Committee.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Before you, Council, as you might be aware, we have a couple of billboards, both to the east and both to the west of us, that have been on display for a number of years now. And the issue right now is to authorize the City of Portage to renew the lease agreements with both Archie Nichols and Don Dixon for the use of land placement for the tourism billboard signs. And I do trust Council's had a chance to see them either moving in this, going into the city or coming out of the city. Alternative is to authorize the lease agreements, and of course to not authorize the lease agreements. Just some of the background. This contract has been in place since 2008 and had an original 5-year lease agreement. It had been extended in 2014 and is scheduled now to, of course, expire on November the 30th of 2019. Administration would like to renew the proposed lease agreements for another 5-year term under the same conditions as previous years. The agreements, you'll see them attached there for your reference, would commence upon date of signing and expire on November 30th, 2024, with an annual payment of $500 made to each landowner on the first day of May during the lease term. So with that said, and it's this committee's recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the 5-year lease agreements with Archie Nichol and Don Dixon at $500 per year for the use of their land for placement of the Trans-Canada billboards, and that the mayor and manager of administration be authorized to execute the leases on behalf of the city of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Buds?
I was just wondering if council had any thoughts on, I guess, the effectiveness of these signs. And so they are similar to a lot of other signs that are just dot our highways, but I think it was an awareness piece. At one point when they were erected, there was also the sale of additional advertising spots, I think, on those signs, and that was removed. And one of those signs recently suffered a significant amount of damage. I believe it is on the west side. And so I know it's not a lot of money, but I do question the effectiveness of the signs and was wondering if there's an appetite to potentially even discontinue them. Any other thoughts from council?
I do know that people do look at them, receive some feedback, which I think I was shared with Councillor Meyer. There was a lady certainly noticed when the sign wasn't lit and very quickly called and informed us, and also called when the sign was relit.
These signs are not lit.
These are advertising signs, not the Portage la Prairie signs.
That's not the one that's lit? Oh,
Now, I don't
Okay.
know if there's lighting attached to them or not, and maybe if I can speak to
Okay,
Councillor Buds quickly on that. One, I think that ever since the Highway 1 was rerouted around Portage, I think was probably an issue in tourism days gone past, which is part of the rationale in my mind of why we'd want signs to maybe draw people within the city of Portage la Prairie that may not come otherwise. I was going to do this obviously in committee. We do have our new Pred executive director, and I certainly don't mean to put her in the spot. I would like to introduce her, but somebody coming from a tourism and economic background, I was wondering if it's plausible to maybe put her on the spot and ask her that question as well.
you better introduce her first, Mr.
Okay,
Councillor
I was
Meyer.
going to do this in committee, but if Councillor Buds is okay with it, I'd like to introduce her first, and then we can certainly work on the question from there. At this moment in time, then, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our new Economic Development Officer from Portage la Prairie, direct from the northern part of the province, which I know has a large tourism influx. But for council and everybody else, I would like to introduce, of course, Miss Eve O'Leary.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Council and Your Worship. I think it's definitely something that we'd have to research. The effectiveness of signage really depends on what the objective of it is. So unfortunately, I couldn't comment on that now.
Councillor Knox.
Can I just get clarification? Like, are we talking the City of Possibilities billboards, or are we talking the new billboard with the pool, with Splash? Which are we talking about right now?
My understanding is it's the new billboards, the ones that has the Splash Island on the one. Okay, you know what? And then I got to apologize.
I'm going to ask
I'm gonna need
Beto
clarification.
to clarify which signs we're talking about here.
Through your worship to Councillor Knox, it's the City of Possibility billboards on the east and west, farther down the highway, of course. But.
And I'll just continue to comment on that then, is that I do believe that we need markers for our community when people are on the highway. It's just like you watch for things and tells you where the golf course is, tells you that sort of thing. So for the cost of them, that they're already there, I don't think I would want to take them down and be one more thing that we're taking away from Portage, for sure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Knox. Councillor Draycott?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think out of all of this conversation, we've probably realized we've got a lot of signage. And so therefore it's difficult to clarify maybe when we're talking about our signage, what we're actually talking about. I would like to review this signage to see if we have your this many minutes away from Portage la Prairie. I think that would be more advantageous for us, given the distance that the signage is away from the city. I agree that signage is important when you're traveling across the country or across the province. It's always good to know when the next big amenity is. And I think that this captures that on both sides of the city. But I would be interested in reviewing what is actually on this signage and whether it is still effectively doing what we had hoped it would do, as per Ms. O'Leary's comment previously. But the signage itself, I believe that we're getting good value for our dollar on this lease.
Okay, Councillor Meyer and then Councillor Wall.
Sorry, thank you very much, Your Worship. The only thing I want to add is that the reason those signs came out was as a result of the TAC Committee, or the Tourism Advisory Council. It's just been disbanded a number of years ago. I was fortunate enough to sit on that council when we decided to put those signs up, now that I know which signs we're talking about. I really strongly feel that for the price that you pay for the position that it's in and for a long-term lease agreement, what we're really not talking about at this point in time is what do the signs say. We're talking about the location of the signs. And I think for the dollar value that's attached, I have been witness to other contracts where it is more dollars to put it on other different parts of land, I think is money well spent. I just wanted to add that to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wall.
I believe Council Meyer covered most of what I was going to say. As long as you have the spot leased, you can change the face of the sign at any time after you review its effectiveness. So.
Any further questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Draycott?
I guess the question would be, have we repaired the broken sign already, or is this an opportune time to look at that?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Draycott, there was a sign damage in the October storm to the west on your way in from Brandon to Portage. That sign, we've been working with our signage company, and they've had some difficulty getting equipment in place. We believe that cost of that sign will be covered under our insurance program, and at that time we can take a closer look at what's actually physically what's displayed on that sign.
Further questions or comments? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Just so everybody's clear, Councillor Meyer, could you just read the motion again?
I would love to read it again. It's the recommendation of this committee, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the 5-year lease agreements with Archie Nickel and Don Dixon at $500 per year for the use of their land for placement of the Trans-Canada billboards, and that the mayor and manager of administration be authorized to execute the leases on behalf of the City of Portage la Prairie.
Thank you. And we have a seconder, and that was Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And Your Worship, that is the end of my report.
Thank you. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last committee meeting, we actually had a presentation from Eco West Climate Change Local Action Plan. It was a large presentation about the steps that the city is looking to embark on. And so that presentation is still there for reference. And out of it, we do have a report to council for the adoption of our climate change local action plan. So the background of it is the Partners for Climate Protection program is a network of Canadian municipal governments that have committed to reducing greenhouse gas and to acting on climate change. Since the program's inception in 1994, over 300 municipalities have joined PCP, making a public commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. PCP is a partnership between the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. It is the Canadian component of ICLEI's International Cities for Climate Protection program. PCP receives financial support from FCM's Green Municipal Fund. The Green Municipal Fund is a unique program administered by FCM. It supports municipal initiatives across Canada that benefits the environment, local economies, and quality of life. Municipal endeavors aligned with GMF's goals and criteria are eligible to receive grants and below-market loans to plan for and to implement activities that will reduce greenhouse gases. By being part of the program, the City of Portage la Prairie is eligible to apply for FCM Green Municipal Fund funding. The PCP 5-milestone process is a performance-based model for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The model is flexible in that milestones can be completed in many different ways, and the 5 milestones are: 1, creating a greenhouse gas emissions inventory and forecast; 2, setting an emission reductions target; 3, developing a local action plan; 4, implementing the local action plan or set of activities; and finally, monitoring, process, and reporting results. The Council of City of Portage la Prairie resolved to join the PCP program in September of 2017. In the fall of 2018, the city's greenhouse gas inventory was reviewed and compiled using data from 2011 and 2015. In January of 2019, council and staff surveys were conducted. Data was compiled and a final report and action plan was presented to council on November 12, 2019. This completes milestone 3 of the process, with the next step to begin implementing the plan. It is the administrative recommendation, whereas the City of Portage la Prairie has committed to becoming a member of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection program, and whereas the PCP program is based on a 5-milestone framework that involves completing a greenhouse gas inventory and forecast, setting a greenhouse gas reduction target and vision, developing a local action plan, implementing the plan, and monitoring the results. And whereas PCP participants are encouraged to work towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions in municipal operations by 20% below base year levels and by 6% below base year levels in the community within 10 years of joining the PCP program. And whereas the City of Portage la Prairie has already created a greenhouse gas inventory, be it resolved that the City of Portage la Prairie commits to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions to 20% below 2011 levels for municipal operations within 10 years and to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions to 6% below the 2011 levels in the community within 10 years. And be it further resolved that the City of Portage la Prairie adopt the Climate Change Local Action Plan as presented, and that it be submitted to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Butts?
I apologize, I was not at the last meeting where this was presented, but just a couple of questions. Part of the next steps in one of the documents identifies capital project funding available to meet these deadlines, and I don't think it's a mystery to a lot of people when we read reports in terms of not only municipal governments at different levels of government having some trouble meeting what they had passed in terms of meeting deadlines and emissions, etc. And so I wanted to know if administration has vetted this plan or this idea that reduction of 20% below 2011, what does that mean to us in terms of investment in capital, and what would it cost us to do that? And has that been worked into our plan? And we do a 10-year capital plan. So is this achievable is my question, because at least at Finance Chair, it's not something that we have considered in any great detail at this point. So I would be uncomfortable agreeing to a resolution that said that we could do something if we haven't thrown it into our planning.
Refer that question to Mr. Pito.
Through your worship to Councillor Budds, a couple questions you asked there, but the first is, had it been vetted through administration? So administration took a look at this goal. Remember, this is a goal that PCP program asks all municipalities to commit to. If you're asking if there's a direct cost associated with it, I would say no, we don't have that cost. You have to remember that this is, a goal that council is setting to achieve. And what does that look like from financial context? Well, when we look at financial decisions, more of an environmental context will be brought into that consideration from administration and proposed to council. So is this a binding resolution to council? It's not. It says in the report that this is a goal that council is setting. There is no, we're committing to trying to achieve that goal, but it's not binding. And that those levels are set nationally, and that's what we have put forward to be approved by council. Can we hit those goals? They're ambitious goals. I don't think anyone tries to hide that this would be an ambitious goal for us to hit, and it would take a lot of consideration from administration on how we'd hit that. The report highlights 3 major areas, from transportation to our utility to also our transit fleet, like all of our vehicles. Those are all areas that we would have to look at how we could reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So yes, this would be a challenging goal for us to meet. No administration doesn't have a cost that we could appropriate to council on what that would cost us. And the best thing I could tell you is that when we look at expenditures related to greenhouse gas emissions, those will be part of our decision when we look at those financial decisions side by side, if council were to approve this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wall.
I did have some questions for the presenter of this report at the last meeting about our biogas, for instance. We've been flaring it for a long time. We're eventually going to be generating electricity using that biogas. What I wanted to know was, if you cease using nice green Manitoba hydropower and are still burning the biogas, even though it's generating electricity, how do you get ahead in carbon credits there? Well, it turns out that there's a formula to convert nice green Manitoba hydropower to a carbon equivalent. So when we stop using that, there's a credit. And then there's a credit for using the biogas to generate power rather than just flaring it. So that's a very simple explanation, but there are advantages to that, and that moves us ahead in this whole process.
Councillor Buds?
My final comment is it clearly states, be it resolved that the City of Portage la Prairie commit to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions to 20% within 10 years. So if we don't really have a measurement, I know we can look through it an environmental lens when we're doing new purchases, and that's good. We should be. That's our responsibility. But if we don't know that information, we could be 5 years into a 10-year plan, and I know it's just a plan and everybody wants to commit to it, but really, if it's not measurable and it's not quantifiable, I question its worth. That particular statement in that, unless as an administration, there's something each year we can say, yes, we made forward progress by doing this. The next year we made forward progress. Because we could be at year 8 out of the plan and have such a minimal impact that you will never meet this, and it'll just be another stat on a shelf.
Reading this, it seems to me that by committing to these things, we then become eligible for FCM money to make our goals happen, to reach these particular goals. And if we don't commit to that, I guess we don't qualify for that money.
Yep.
Further comments or questions, Councillor Draycott?
I do believe, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but our presenters last meeting did state that they were lofty goals, that they were goals that would take a lot of work to get to, but I don't think that you achieve a goal unless you set it. So if we were to not achieve, or if we were not to set a goal, then we wouldn't really be holding ourselves accountable. But I understand your statement, are we going to hold ourselves accountable? So.
Further comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And finally, we did also have a presentation from Mary Lawrence from Portage la Prairie Hub. She's the new hub coordinator, and she did attend our last committee meeting as well to give us an update as to the new hub model. And unless there's any questions about that presentation, then that is all I had this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
Waterworks Committee has nothing this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Espy, Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Councillor Knox, Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a reminder to Council about the crime forum tomorrow night that we are in collaboration with PCRC, the RCMP, and the Chamber, geared towards our Chamber members and business community. So we look forward to a good evening.
At 7 o'clock at Herman Pryor.
7 o'clock at Prairie Fusion Arts Center, the Gillespie.
Gillespie. Okay. Good thing you mentioned that.
Yeah, thank you. That so ends my report.
Thank you. We have no deferred business. However, we do have some items of new business. First is the October 2019 financial statements. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you. So this is for information only. The statements are attached. There's a bit of a summary there. October is a non-quarter month end. We would typically, administration would provide the full financial statements without comment. But here is a couple, and I think it really relates to the October storm that we did. Obviously, we know all about. It's you can see that the costs have escalated dramatically. At the end of October, we thought that amount was about $105,000, but now at the end of November, 1 month later, as costs continue to come in, and we're actually still incurring some smaller amounts, we're up over around 234,000. So We have contacted our insurance agency, which is the proper method to do, and then depending on how that comes out, we still, as you remembered, we had that resolution for disaster financial assistance that was approved. And so, we all know that we did incur a significant amount of costs as related to that storm. I think more analysis has to be completed, but we are still looking at have a surplus in our general and our utility funds for around the same amount, just over $250,000 each. So unless there's some questions, that does conclude the financial statement update.
And would you like to move into the next new piece of business, which is the 2020 interim operating and capital budget?
Yep, this is another housekeeping item that we do every year, and we do interim budgets for operating and capital purchases before our complete financial plan is completed. And so a council, the Municipal Act does state that a council may adopt an interim operating budget to have an effect only until the council adopts the operating budget for the fiscal year. So as you already know, we are in the process of doing that. We do a summary of the projected expenses. You can see in our general operating fund, that is about 7.6 million. And on the utility, it's about 3.4. We also do the capital expenditures that we would be purchasing for that period of time, and just for the time period till we get everything approved. And the capital purchase for the general fund is 600,000 and 4.2 million for the utility, and that is because of the aggressive work that we're doing in our utility side of things. So it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the following 2020 interim budget amounts: 7.7 million for operating and 600,000 capital budgets for the general operating fund, and 3.4 million for operating and 4.2 million capital budgets for the utility operating fund.
Okay, moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And finally, the last piece of old business, third reading of 2020 water and sewer rates, and this is finance.
Thank you. And so this is under, like you had said, the old business category, because this has been, it's part of a normal process, but it has been dragging on for some time. And it is to give our third and final reading for our bylaw that deals with the 2020 water and sewer rates in our application for increases. And so in 2020, water and sewer rate increases under PUB simplified rate application processes was provided to us in the summer in July. First reading was approved on that date, and second reading was approved on September 9th, but then it had to go over to the Public Utility Board, and they did provide their approval on November 27th, 2019. And all of this is in place for January 1, 2020. The schedule is attached to the report, but it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie give third reading to 2020 water and sewer rates bylaw 19-8699, and it be finally passed, signed, and sealed. The approved utility rates will be effective January 1, 2020.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. So council is adjourned at 6:53 p.m. and we're going to move right into committee. Call committee to order at 6:44 p.m. And first up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your committee has nothing to report for this meeting.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development. Councillor Meyer, anything you'd like to report this evening?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Of course, every time we talk about the building permits, we always talk about the proof that the investment in the city is alive and well. Since seeing no other items on the committee agenda, I figure I could maybe take about an hour and really explain each one in detail.
Oh, good.
I'm kidding. I don't mean facetious. All joking aside, Council, you know it's an exciting time anytime we look at an increase in permits and values, and I just want to state for the record that, and we'll bring it to Council next Council meeting in January, is that this is just till the end of October, and we are currently at almost $192 million in permits. Permits are only up 10 from last year, so it does show you the size and the significance of the increase as well. So With that said, I'm always excited to read about the new building permits. And again, I don't have any illusion that they may continue on, but we kind of celebrate the opportunity when we have that chance. And unless there's any questions, that would be my report.
I have a question, but I'll go through you to probably Mr. Brooks. I'd just like to get his predictions for 2020, if this trend will continue or not.
Can I just say no comment? I don't know. I think we're on a really high right now. I think we'll see a slight decline possibly next year on it, but there's still stuff on the works and stuff that's coming up yet. So I think we'll have a healthy year yet.
Okay, thank you. No other questions for Councillor Meyer? Okay, thank you. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to take a moment to congratulate PCRC. They actually had a week-long event last week where they closed their doors and made a significant contribution to our community and surrounding communities. I pulled out my wallet today and realized, I should have gone to the identification because I needed some adjustments to my identification and I missed it. So congratulations on your event last week. And I did want to invite Ms. Espy to give us a bit of an update from PCRC as to what is happening over there.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. I did want to touch on last week's event. So we're a pretty busy office, and last week was incredibly busy. So we closed our doors to have a week-long identification clinic where we partnered with Indigenous Services Canada, Manitoba Health, Southern Health, Vital Statistics, the CRA, and Service Canada. We had over 2,100 people through our doors who came from Saskatchewan, Island Lakes, Lake St. Martin. It was all across Manitoba. People came for this event. It was eye-opening. It was incredible, the amount of people we saw through our doors. But we could not have done it without the volunteers who participated in that event. We had 20 volunteers show up every day from all across our region to help us make this a go. And it went very well for Indigenous Services Canada as well. So it was a really great event. And my team did a really great job at it. So just wanted to update on our numbers. Our official count was 2,112 people through.
Thank you, Your Worship. And unless Ms. Davison has anything to add, a first school of what's going on over there, then that concludes my committee report.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just wondering if our youth councillor, Davidson, had anything to say in the last meeting of 2019. Anything you want to mention? Okay. I'm going to take that as a no. Councillor Wall?
Councillor Wall just wants to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Espy?
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox?
Nothing to report tonight, Your Worship.
Okay. And committee is adjourned at 6:48 p.m. and we'll see everybody in the new year.